Gosh, we appreciate y'all being here. It's a great day. Great day to be a Georgian. And appreciate y'all being here so much because this is not a Senate resolution study committee. This is a study committee that came about through a lot of conversation with Senator Dixon, myself, Senator Irwin, and then some of our literacy council members. And we'll get into that a little bit more in a few minutes. And it's a joint committee meeting with the Education and Youth in the Senate and the Higher Education Committee meeting. So let me give you a little bit of information first. Again, this is joint committee meeting, Education, Youth, and Higher Education. The title of this is Georgia Educator Pipeline. That's the official title of it. My title is Why Are People Not Going into Education and Why Are People Getting Out of Education? And I think it's a critical issue, and we'll get into it and we'll hear more and more in a few minutes about it. I'd like to thank my cohort here, Senator Dixon, for co-sponsoring this committee with me. He and I were in another committee meeting a few minutes ago, and just got, sorry we're a little bit late, but we'll be ready. We will have 4 or 5 of these meetings, and they'll be announced later on. What we're trying to do, Senator Dixon and I on a study committee meeting with Senator Greg Dozal, and we're trying to piggyback this with Senator Dozal's committee so that we can both be up here at the Capitol at the same time. So that's why we get our little bit of lead from when Senator Dozal has his committee meetings. So just kind of bear with us on that. And then also we will bring all presenters up to the table after they present. And so senators, if you would, please let's hold our questions to the end, and we'll do a little panel type discussion at the end. We will also have time for public comments. So do we have a sign-up sheet?
Yes, I'll get it to you in just
Okay, we'll have a sign-up sheet right out here, so please feel free to sign up. We'll try our best to get out of here somewhere between 11:30 and 12 o'clock. This is so important that we don't want to waste time, but we also want to make good use of our time. Senator Burns, you mind opening us with a prayer?
Father, we're grateful for this day. We're grateful for your kindness and your grace and your mercy. We pray for recovery
Thank you.
in Florida and North Carolina. We recognize the challenges that our state has faced over the last 3 weeks. Give us wisdom, patience, give us chainsaws and workers who can clear debris. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the topics of education in Georgia. Give us clear minds and keen ears. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, Senator Burns. Let me give you. Senator, I'm sorry for not turning the mic on to you, but I knew you got a strong voice, so I'm sure we all heard you. I know the Lord heard you. That's the most important. This series of meetings began with us hearing from school and school district leaders and our Senate leaders. Let me stress that our teachers and leaders are the most passionate, committed professionals that we know. They have challenges that I don't believe most of us even know how to address. I have so much praise for the work they do on a daily basis. Their jobs are all encompassing, as we well know. They not only reach out, they also teach. But they also provide counsel, they provide tutoring, they provide after-school opportunities and transportation. And many of them work long hours, after hours. You know, growing up, we thought a teacher got out at 3 o'clock, but I learned from being married to a retired teacher that they get out of class, sometimes school, 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, and a lot of times on the weekend. In wanting to understand more about the workforce, this included hearing that schools opened last year with the inability to hire teachers in a variety of areas. You know, in our area, and I won't name the schools, but we actually had parapros teaching classes. We didn't have certified teachers in classes. We heard that there's the issue of finding certified teachers in field to teach subjects they are trained to teach. Also, we looked at literacy coach programs. We realized that it might not be in it might not be in the district's best interest to recruit classroom teachers for those roles, because classroom teachers are loaded down as it is. That's when we realize that we have a big problem. We don't have a sufficient and sustainable educator pipeline. Then there's the issue of training and retaining school and district leaders. We've had tremendous turnover in the last few years in the principals and superintendents, and obviously in our teachers. I am personally concerned that we're not putting sufficient emphasis on districts building a bench for school principals. Leading a school is a serious business, and the business side of school management is as critical as the academic side. Principals need to know human relations and how to recruit and retain the best teachers and staff. They need to know how to maximize budgets and flexibility with class size, teacher certification, and other items. Similarly, district leaders have turned over in record-setting fashion in the last 2 years. In talking with Chairman Irwin in the House, I've heard that over 60 superintendents have left their districts. Again, where's the bench? Where's the people to come in at? Who is positioned and trained to come into these roles? Georgia's educator workforce, ensuring the best are in place with the training and ability to teach and lead is critical. Senator Dixon and I are very committed to exploring these issues in a series of 4 to 5 meetings. We're looking for answers to teacher shortage issues and sufficient leader training. Thank you to our presenters and our senators for being here, for participating this morning. We look forward to learning more. Who is Mike 13? You want to speak? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Our first 2 speakers today are Monica and Sue Yang. And you're going to have to pronounce both of y'all are going to have to pronounce your last names when you get up here. And they're from the Governor's Office of Student Achievement. We are going to give the speakers 15 minutes to speak, and that will give us plenty of time at the end to kind of do our little panel with our questions on, okay? So if y'all would introduce yourself and tell us where you're from, or who you work with, excuse me.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, great. My name is Monica Flamini. I'm a senior policy and research analyst with the Governor's Office of Student Achievement.
My name is Shuyang Wang. I'm also a policy and research analyst at GOSA.
All right. So today we're going to talk with y'all about the K-12 teacher and leader workforce
Move
report.
that mic down a little bit. Yeah, there you go, right there. Okay,
Are we good?
yeah.
Okay, great. We're going to talk to you about a report that our agency publishes every year, which seeks to overview the teacher and leader workforce. So just high-level trends that we're seeing, as well as an additional analysis that we did this year on the way poverty is intersecting with these trends, student-level poverty. And after each slide, we'll kind of discuss some policy implications. This is a really good way to kind of set the stage for what Senator Hickman was saying, give an overview of what this workforce is actually looking like over the years and seeing how it's also been changing.
Okay, I'm gonna start us off with some really high-level overview of the overall count of teachers and leaders in the state of Georgia. We're showing data here from 2018-19 school year to 2022-23. So overall, we have about 120,000 teachers every year, and about 8,000 to 9,000 leaders every year. And throughout this 5 years showing, we do see that the number is trending upwards slightly from year to year for both teachers and leaders. Next, we have the overall count of education prep program graduates or completers from 2018-19 to the most recent year of 2023 to 24 school year. This really shows the supply of newly certified teachers to the Georgia educator workforce, and we receive this data from Georgia PSC every year. The number of traditionally prepped teachers, which is shown in the blue bars, show some fluctuation throughout this years indicated here, and we have the most produced during the 2021 to 2022 school year, and we have more than 4,000 teachers receive their initial traditional certification. The number of alternatively prepped teachers, which is the green section on the top, shows alternatively prepped teachers, and it has higher degree of fluctuation. During the 2020 to 21 school year, we had the highest production numbers of more than 1,100 teachers being alternatively prepped. And just to show the trend of sum total between traditional and alternative programs, we show the sum in the orange line, and you can see there is a trend. It's trending upwards mostly, but we did have a little dip in 2022 to 23 school year, but it's generally pretty even. So actually, we want to talk a little bit about the issue with teacher shortage here in this slide. So Georgia PSC and GOSA, in this next cycle of producing this workforce report, we're thinking about collaborating to understand it better by getting maybe a survey at the district level, because we know showing these numbers, it's not really indicating any sort of shortage because it is trending upwards. Also, the total count of teachers leaders are also trending upwards, but it's really important to have a clear definition of teacher shortage here, because are you talking about putting bodies in the classrooms, or are we talking about teacher teaching out of field courses? So we really want to have a more clear definition of measure, and then we can showcase maybe there are really large district variations in terms of teacher shortage. So that is a really important policy implication, and we're so glad that Georgia PSC and GOSA can maybe join force and do something cool in this area.
And a state really motivating our work around this shortage discussion, as well as a deeper understanding of vacancy, is actually South Carolina. They do a really, really good report every year on this. So we've been in touch with them as well to try to understand the questions that they're asking districts to better define what vacancy is here.
Here we show the top 5 universities that are producing the most in terms of traditionally prepped teachers every year. They are University of Georgia, Kennesaw State, Georgia State, Georgia Southern, and University of West Georgia. Together, these 5 institutions produce roughly half of all traditionally prepped teachers in the state. We move on to track teacher retention in this slide, meaning how many teachers remain in the same school district from year to year. The average teacher retention rate across Georgia was 86.3% during the 21 to 22 school year, and the district retention rates have some variation from 65.8% to 95.6%. This really showcases that the variation across different school districts, so we created this map to better visualize this data. The darker blue color meaning shows that there are higher level of retention, so teachers are more likely to be retained in the same district, and the lighter color spots really shows where districts might be struggling to retain their teachers from year to year. We have the highest retention district is actually Glasscock School District, Pike, Pierce, Telfair, and Jenkins. Districts with the lowest retention or highest attrition is Calhoun, Baker, Brooks, Chattahoochee, and Quitman. And another way to track teacher retention is looking at how many teachers are in the teacher workforce in Georgia, but moved to other school districts. And the highest inter-district mobility districts are Baker, Commerce City, Macon, Quitman, and Brooks. And we're happy to supply this data if you want the more.
Would you mind repeating those, please, starting with the ones that got the highest retention rate and the lowest retention rate?
For sure. The ones with highest retention is Glasscock.
Highest retention?
Yes, highest retention is Glasscock, Pike, Pierce, Telfair, and Jenkins. And those are in the darkest blue color in your district on this map.
And what's the lowest?
Lowest are Calhoun, Baker, Brooks, Chattahoochee, and Quitman.
And what kind of retention rates are those?
Those, so these are
Calhoun was 34.2.
attrition.
For retention or for attrition?
Well, retention is the lowest, I guess the lowest retention rate.
Yeah, so the lowest retention, Quitman was 25%, and then Calhoun of that list, 34.2. So it ranged between 34 and about 25%. And for highest retention, it ranged from about 94 to 96% of teachers retained.
So is there a distinction between rural Georgia and other Georgia?
Yes, I mean, I think this map could definitely reflect that. And I think some additional work can definitely be done in surveying those teachers from these specific places that are showing lower retention in the rural areas and kind of comparing them to similar districts maybe showing a bit higher retention and seeing what's being done. I think there's a lot of opportunity there for some qualitative discussions with them.
Okay, thank you.
And we're definitely happy to provide the spreadsheet of listing the retention rate of all school districts, if that would be helpful. And we also break down teacher retention by content area taught. So this definition of retention is different from the last slide because here teacher retention is defined as teaching in the same course from previous year to the current year. And here we are showing data from 2021 to 2022 school year. And you can see across all of these content areas, the retention rate is pretty low. They range from 44.3%, which is the lowest for mathematics courses, to the highest being 60.4% in fine arts. But overall, we see this rate is around 50%. So half of teachers are teaching in the same course from year to year, roughly.
And this coincides a lot with also the national trends that we're seeing, right? There's a lot of opportunities outside of teaching that are going to pay a lot in the math area, right? So it makes sense that we're seeing a lot of attrition within that area. It coincides with also what we're seeing nationally within these content areas. So we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit now and talk about what teachers are looking like in relation to the students that they're teaching, as well as the poverty rates in which they're teaching. So when we talk about retention and recruitment, it's important to know who we're talking about. So this is going to overview the racial and ethnic demographics of teachers, new teachers, and students. So you can see primarily within the overall teacher workforce, most teachers are identifying as white, 67%. What we're also seeing is new teachers are tending to be more diverse than the overall teaching force, which is a really important implication, especially when we understand the importance of same-race teachers to their students and the benefits that brings. A recent study out of Tennessee found that if a Black student is exposed to a Black teacher within their K through 3 career, they're 13 points more likely to graduate, 13 percentage points more likely to graduate. So that is a really stunning and important policy implication of this. And I know our state has realized that with bills like SB 88, the teacher pipeline bill, which also emphasized the importance of collaboration between Georgia PSC and our state HBCUs. What we want to bring to the table today is an expansion of that perhaps within the Hispanic students. So we're seeing actually a 15 percentage point gap in representation representation between Hispanic students and Hispanic teachers. Understanding that Hispanic and Asian students are among the fastest growing students in our state population, this, I believe, presents some really important implications to expand upon, especially as it relates to student achievement as well as teacher retention and recruitment. We are really excited to also be able to speak about this analysis. This was something that our Executive Director, Joy Hawkins, as well as Senator Hickman, have been so supportive of. We have been speaking a lot about the way school poverty and poverty levels are the greatest predictor of a student's outcome. What our hypothesis was going into this is that student poverty is also going to be among the greatest predictors of how teachers sort into our state's schools. So what we are going to be looking at are how teacher characteristics differ between high and low poverty schools. And in Georgia, we define poverty using a measure called direct certification, which measures the number of homeless, migrant, or unaccompanied youth, as well as students that are part of families that receive SNAP or TANF benefits. So this looks really scary, and I promise you it's not. All this is showing is we're right. Poverty is a huge predictor of teacher retention in the state. If you look at the horizontal axis here, we see percent of teachers retained in a district. And if you look at the vertical axis, you see the percent of directly certified students in the district. And we see that line trending downwards, which basically means that as percent direct cert increases, percent teacher retention decreases. We found that not only are they negatively correlated, but they are highly significantly correlated. This is a pretty major thing to speak about when we talk about recruitment and retention. School poverty, student poverty is one of the largest predictors of this entire thing that we're looking at.
Can you define high poverty versus low poverty?
Absolutely. So the way that we are defining high and low poverty, I'll actually go to the next slide because that's how we define it in the next. So we're looking at direct cert. We define the highest poverty schools as having direct certification in their schools about above 40%, and lower poverty being between 0 to 10% direct cert students. So this graph is also showing us a really important aspect of teacher sorting, which is higher, more experienced teachers are more likely to go to lower poverty schools, which is really important when we understand the very unique complications and challenges associated with poverty and teaching students in poverty, where to the extent that experience is indicative of teacher quality, we're seeing that lower experienced teachers are going to higher poverty schools, which again have a lot of challenges, right? So how we're targeting those resources and those targeting recruitment efforts is going to be important for understanding kind of how teachers are looking at where they want to teach. We're also seeing a very interesting demographic trend as it relates to school poverty levels. This is a similar type of finding. If you see on the horizontal axis, that's the percent of directly certified students in schools. So all the way to the left are like the lowest poverty schools, and all the way to the right are the highest poverty schools. And then that solid black line that's increasing going up to the right, that is the percentage of Black teachers in schools. We see that directly increasing as the percentage of directly certified students increases. And we see that opposite trend actually happening with white teachers, meaning that as there are more directly certified students in schools, there are fewer white teachers in schools. This is an important implication when we also think about who in our teacher workforce is working in the most challenging environments and how we can support them to recruit and retain, and making sure that these discussions of the school environments that they're going into, that they're prepared for that at the preparation levels within our EPP programs. So there's a lot more to talk about. We only have 15 minutes, but this was definitely something that we're excited to be helping with and leading the discussion in. Our emails are right here. Please feel free to reach out to us. We have a lot more data on this as it relates to achievement as well. So we're happy to speak with y'all about that. Thank you guys so much.
Good. We'll bring you back when we have the little panel. Okay? Thank you.
Sounds
Very,
good.
very
Thank
interesting.
you.
Thank you. Our next presenter is Miss April Aldridge from the Georgia Department of Education. April?
Good morning.
Morning.
Well, thank you for having us here today. My name is April Aldridge, and I serve as the Deputy Superintendent of Teaching and Learning. I actually brought along two educators who are going to help us talk a little bit today about the current status of teacher workforce. And I think the progression of conversation flows really nicely behind the data and statistics that the previous presenters just shared. But we're really going to focus today on really thinking about the profile of Georgia educators and kind of the what behind the statistics. What is happening and what are we doing? And I'm going to stop just a second and let us get our presentation up.
Let me, oh, wait, just gotta have one more presentation.
Do we have that? Do we have that presentation?
Yes, we do indeed.
I don't think so. Oh, just got it? Okay, here we go. Thank y'all.
Here you go. Let me see if I can stick it in.
I don't think we can underestimate or underthink our administrative people that help us so much and work so hard for us. So, Rachel, thank you for doing this. And of course, Paige, you're wonderful.
There,
There we
finally.
go. Perfect. Okay,
There you go.
there we go.
All right.
Perfect. Sorry about that. All right. Then it just goes to the bottom.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Rachel. All right. We're good? So we're
We're
going to
good.
start out with talking a little bit about the profile of a Georgia educator today. We talked a little bit about, you saw some retention numbers, but as of 2024, the retention rate is 90.08. And so we're encouraged by that because not only do we want to recruit teachers, we certainly want to keep these educators in the field. Just a couple of other points to just kind of give you a beginning overview. Right now, the average total years of teaching experience in Georgia is 11.9 years. The average Georgia teacher starting salary is $41,148. And then the average teacher salary in Georgia is $64,461. And certainly that is impacted by years of experience, years of education, local supplements, things like that. So
Can I
just-
ask you, is that, that's teacher, that's not administrative people?
Correct, that's teacher.
Just classroom people, okay.
All right. So, the conversation around teacher recruitment retention is not a new conversation. Even as far back as 2015, the department facilitated a teacher survey. And some of the actions that have been taken by listening to the voices of the teachers who are in our classroom are listed for you on this slide. We've taken, concentrated efforts to reduce the number of high-stakes tests, added professional growth component to our evaluation system, reduced the number of observations for veteran teachers, certainly honoring their experience and expertise and professionalism, required districts to administer the Georgia Milestones end of grades test within the last 25 days of the regular school year to maximize instructional time, updated the test design to reduce testing time and increase instructional hours, and certainly there has been a collaborative effort for teacher pay raises, and we thank you and the governor's office for that as well. At this time, I really want to call on someone who probably needs very little introduction, but this is Miss Holly Witcher. She is our current Georgia Teacher of the Year, and I've asked her to join me so that she can share with you all a little bit about what happened after this teacher survey and how it led to the teacher burnout report in Georgia. So thanks, Holly, for joining us.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Like she said, the 2015 survey that came out, there were a lot of actions that happened, so it was very encouraging to teachers to know we're seeing some data and things are happening from it. We saw, like she mentioned, the reduction in high stakes testing, providing some pay raises, and also using federal relief funds to support teachers and compensate for when we're spending money on those classroom supplies. And another great response to that as well was the addition of the Teacher of the Year on the state board as an ex officio member. So there's now a voice, because as you see, the lessons from the burnout report say there were 5 key themes and action steps. And so you had your assessment, preserving and protecting time, pressures and unrealistic expectations, and that teacher voice and professional growth was a big point in that. So if you have not looked over the teacher burnout report in a while, I encourage you to go back and look over it again, because the information that is in it is still very relevant. Coming straight from the classroom, I can say that many of the sentiments that are expressed in it are still very valid today. So as we move on and say what happened after that. So we had the 2015 survey that came out, the actions were taken, and then in 2022, the teacher burnout report came out. And there are several actions that came out as a result of the burnout report. There was, again, the addition of reduced number and weight of high stakes testing in the classrooms. I'm so excited about the updated teacher and staff climate surveys that provide us with more specific information about exactly what we can do when the climate isn't good. Why is the climate not good? So those updated surveys are definitely a good thing for us. We provided an employee assistance program for educators and support staff, advocating for pay increases beyond 21 years on the state scale, salary scale. That's something that we're continuing to do. We saw that in the burnout as a concern and continuing to advocate for that. And then also piloting a new teacher evaluation system that meets educators where we are. It provides induction and mentoring and leadership supports. So I'm going to let April kind of talk a little bit to that evaluation system.
So we'll talk a little bit about Georgia Leads, and Georgia Leads is our new pilot evaluation system. We're in the second full year of this pilot. We have a combination of about 16 LEAs that are participating in that. The key features of Georgia Leads are direct responses to the teacher burnout report. And this pilot and this evaluation system is really being developed to focus on some key components that you see on the screen and on your handout. Really emphasizing instructional practices, provides competency-based professional development, creates opportunity for teacher leadership pathways. So not only are we talking about how do we recruit and retain teachers, but how do we also build that pipeline for great leadership, which research would tell you also helps to support teacher recruitment, retention, and satisfaction in the classroom. Offers the Elevate observation as a feedback model, supports student growth measures determined by district needs, and provides schools and districts with on-site support. Now, I could talk to you a really, really long time about Georgia Leads, but one of the key components of Georgia Leads that I think is very valuable is that it honors teacher voice in the process. And so while we're building this evaluation system, we are listening to the field, and we are being able to create a system that really moves from evaluation to elevation, from teaching to coaching, and really puts the focus on the main thing, which what is happening in the classroom and how our students having opportunities to open their pathways to achieve the highest level of academic success, and supporting teachers along the way. So what are a couple of other things that are happening with the collaboration of Georgia DOE and other thought partners to really focus on how we're building, sustaining, and growing our teacher workforce? And these are a couple of things up here that I'll just really move through very quickly, but certainly focused on registered teacher apprenticeships. Pair to Teacher grant. That is the Pair to Teacher 5,000 grant, where paraprofessionals who already hold a 4-year degree are able to get their initial certification and be reimbursed up to $5,000 for that expense. So that is definitely a piece that draws educators into our workforce. Teachers as leaders, working with teacher advisory councils, the accomplished teacher designation. So really elevating the professionalism of our quality teachers in our classroom. classrooms. And teachers being very heavily involved in the standards process and resource development and assessment development, giving them, again, a voice at the table to really help shape and mold the work that they're engaged in. Our Certified Teacher Induction Program, we just had the initial year of this program, and that is really allowing LEAs and school districts, our local education agencies, to create induction programs that mentor, support, and guide those newest educators so that we can retain them beyond that 4 or 5 year kind of period where sometimes our teachers are deciding to leave the workforce. Grow your own programs. You will see many examples of this across the state where we are intentionally growing programs beginning at the high school level so that we're encouraging teachers to choose education at an early age and providing them pathways to their college institutions so they can come back and teach in our own local communities. And certainly a myriad of partnerships with many different facets as we continue to put our heads together in a way that we can recruit and retain quality educators. Certainly some legislative actions that have preempted some work that you all are very familiar with. The teacher tax credit that recruits teachers and provides them a tax credit when they teach in a rural district or one of those lowest, more poverty indicated school systems. The return to work bill, which currently we have, and I knew I was going to forget this number right off the top of my head, but 382 educators who are retired educators or who are taking advantage of this. Who wins? We win as a state because our students are having the instruction by quality, trained professional teachers. And so that has been an exciting and really important aspect of growing the teacher workforce. Teacher pay raises, certainly that has been a really positive over the last, since 2019, we've seen almost a $10,000 increase in teacher salaries. Math and science teacher incentives, certainly this helps us to recruit teachers in 2 of our highest areas of need, and that incentive is available to teachers who meet those eligible criteria. And then the teacher pipeline, which was mentioned by our previous presenters as well, which not only promotes an increase in educator enrollment at our HBCUs, but also promotes certification for our veterans. And again, as Holly mentioned, allows our Teacher of the Year to serve as an ex officio State Board of Education member. I'm also excited to announce that we are adding to our teacher recruitment workforce team Ms. Christy Todd, who was our 2024 Georgia Teacher of the Year, and I've asked her to join us today and talk a little bit about how her role at the department is going to continue to support in this area of recruitment.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. And, you know, when you have the chance to serve as Georgia Teacher of the Year, you learn a lot. You see a lot. You realize the needs of the state. And one thing that I realized during my travels is that if Georgia wants to remain the #1 state to do business, we must also become the #1 state for teachers to teach. Our state, our families, our students' future economic prosperity, it depends on having a highly qualified teacher in each and every single one of our classrooms in rural, suburban, and urban districts. So I'm excited to be part and continue to serve in this new way. So one thing that we're doing at the department is really looking at the profiles, the candidates of who could be a teacher, and then trying to map those pathways and help find funding to get them into the classroom and the support that they need. So whether that's somebody with a bachelor's degree that's a parapro that you heard about the grants that we have for endorsements to get them in there with that $5,000 reimbursement grant, to maybe you're a professional that wants to switch careers. And we're using the Georgia TAP grant to make that happen. Or if you're a teacher and you want to be a teacher leader, you want to grow in new and different ways. And I keep telling people I'm still a teacher, I just have a different classroom, right? So what does that look like? Sometimes that's leadership certifications, and we have grants for that. What about teachers who want to add endorsements to expand? You're already there and you want to grow and become a better teacher. And one of the grants that we've been able to do is our dyslexia endorsements. And in the last 2 years, almost $3 million has been spent in getting 1,200 teachers with dyslexia to certification to better support our students. Holly is one of those teachers right now who is going through that endorsement process. or if you're a school district leader and you're seeking funding for teaching pathways, we have grants available for that as well for our local schools to embrace to create more pathways for teaching. Another thing that we're looking at is what are those recruitment practices that we can do not only at the state level, but the local level? Where can we innovate? And where can we find those amazing ideas and share those ideas, a playbook of ideas to help other districts? I've been able to witness some of these in action last year as Teacher of the Year. Signing days, where we have, just like you'd have an athlete in high school sign that they're going to a college, we now have educator signing days, which is so fun to have those students there and sign that they're ready to go into the teaching profession. Community partners are getting involved, like Georgia Power, in recruiting Spanish-speaking high schoolers and students to go into the teaching profession. Some of our districts are doing signing bonuses, which is really helpful, especially in rural areas where the local supplements may not be as high. Teacher residencies, where this is a huge exciting thing that is happening right now, where student teachers in their senior year of college are getting paid to be the teacher of record with mentor teachers. So they're paid and also being student teacher credit at the same time from their college. So it's a wonderful opportunity to have that teacher residency. And finally, the Troops to Teachers program, where we're increasing certification options for our service members, and Kennesaw State University is doing that. So where do we go next? And we think that part of the work that we invite you to join us in is looking at our legislative priorities to help increase and retain our teacher workforce this coming year. The first is to expand the salary step increase for teachers beyond 21 years. Right now, when you are a teacher, when you hit 21 years, you will not receive a step increase raise, again, in your profession. So you're looking at 9 years of not getting a step increase raise. Because of that, right now, the average retirement age is 25 years of service. And we believe that by increasing those step increases, that we can keep our veteran teachers in the classroom to support students and to also mentor our new teachers, highly qualified workforce that's leaving early. A lot of them are going and getting second jobs, retiring and getting another job when they could stay and serve longer. We also like to expand the return to work opportunities to expand reading, math, and special education statewide as high needs priority subject areas for teachers to return to work after they retire. And then secure a minimum number of personal days for teachers and classified staff, which is incredibly important to give our teachers the professional opportunity to choose the way they want to use the days that they earn. So we thank you so much for the opportunity to present today, and we look forward to working together to make Georgia the #1 state for teachers to teach.
Senator, we're going to hold our question to the end, and we're going to bring them all up here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Very, very, very good. Still got a lot of questions. Ms. Claire Suggs from the Page. Yeah, Page. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
I am delighted to be here. Is this
Should be on.
okay? And let's see. Well, while we are excuse me, while we are waiting for
Pull the microphone down. There you go.
Sorry, I do not have the wonderful teacher voice of the ladies who came before me, and I do not have their wonderful skill and panache. So I will be striving to hit the bar that they set in their presentation. Yes, my name is Claire Suggs, and I'm a consultant with PAGE, the Professional Association of Georgia Educators. And I just want to start by saying how delighted thank you. how delighted the team at Page is that these two committees have decided to really dig into this issue, really looking at how we recruit and support educators throughout their career. Obviously, this is a priority for Page, so we are so delighted with this. I also want to, on behalf of Margaret Ciccarelli, the legislative director for Page, and the rest of the Page legislative team, they unfortunately had a previous commitment out of state. Otherwise, they would absolutely be here and be part of this conversation, and they are very much looking forward to engaging with all of the committee members as your work moves forward. Excuse me. So my task today is to share with all of you results from the latest survey that Page did of its members. Excuse me. As some of you may know, Page surveys its members, or has for a number of years, has surveyed its members every year. Usually we do it in the fall, and usually we focus on topics that we think will come up during the legislative session. But we've been starting to explore some broader issues in recent years in response to feedback that we were getting from members about concerns about the professions, the kind of issues that you all are looking at today. And so this year, in addition to the normal survey, we did a second survey in the spring. And we really wanted, excuse me, to unpack some of the things that we were starting to hear about. And Chairman Hickman, some of the things you lifted up in your opening comments about the workload manageability, and to really so that we could understand and share with advocates, or excuse me, with decision makers like yourselves, what the experiences of teachers are. So I want to start with that survey data. So the most recent survey we did in May, so this is very fresh data. We had nearly 3,700 educators from across the state. They've completed the survey. About 70% of them are classroom teachers. The rest of them are working in different roles, paraprofessionals, school leaders, just the full gamut of people who are working in schools and in districts. And again, representing 169 of our 180 districts. So this really is a good cross-section of the education workforce. I should also note, this, of course, we are surveying the teachers who thus far have decided to stay. It's kind of a statement of the obvious, but if you've already chosen to leave, we're not capturing the reason why you chose to left with this data. And I want to start by lifting up just a couple of the key points that really resonated with us at the Page team. One of the first questions that we asked was about their job satisfaction, and I think there's kind of a bright spot here. Or the majority of our teachers are at least somewhat satisfied with their jobs. 32% of teachers said that they're, satisfied or very satisfied. About half said somewhat satisfied, and only 16% said no, they're really not happy in their jobs. Data was a little less optimistic when we asked about burnout, and this goes back to the burnout report. We know that burnout is a real challenge, and 47% of respondents of teachers across the survey said that they are burned out. A significant portion, 36%, said that they're somewhat burned out, and it's just that small sliver of folks who said, yeah, burnout's not an issue for me. And the reason that we wanted to lift up these 2 points is, the research, no surprise, the research shows that if you have high job satisfaction, you're more likely to stay in your job. And specifically that research is looking at teachers, and also kind of the reverse is true for burnout. If you have high levels of burnout, you are more likely to leave the classroom. And then the next data point is one that, I apologize. The challenge of, there we go. The challenge of trying to go back and forth between glasses and not having glasses. We asked, how likely would you be to recommend a career in education? Only 21% of teachers across the state said they would recommend going into education right now. And, you know, which is which is not a large number. It's a very troubling number. And when we looked more specifically at people who said that they were satisfied in their jobs, so that sliver of teachers who said, yes, I'm happy, I'm satisfied with my job, the percentage of those teachers who would recommend a career in education was 46%. So even among those teachers who are essentially content with their jobs, they are reluctant to encourage young people to go into teaching. And that, again, for us in the PAGE team is a sign of trouble. That teaching is, for many educators across the state, a very fulfilling profession. They are content in it. But there's also signs that there's a lot of strain on the profession. I mean, and that's what you all are here trying to unpack. What are the things that are really eroding their commitment to staying in the classroom? And so that's what I want to turn to next. You know, kind of with those big picture takeaways, what's underneath that? Why are folks kind of dissatisfied or frustrated and thinking about leaving? We have a report which goes into more of the details, but I wanted to highlight just a few of the things that the survey showed, and also that we're hearing just anecdotally and feedback from members. Let's see if I can do this. We asked about cost of living. And I know teachers are not unique in this, educators are not unique, Georgians across the state are struggling, but certainly educators are struggling with covering their living expenses. The upside is over half of teachers said that they never had difficulty covering their living expenses, or did so only sometimes. It wasn't a regular thing. But that means that over 40% of teachers report that most of the time, or all of the time, they are struggling to cover those living expenses. And unsurprisingly, of course, we see some variation based on age, so that those newest teachers, those young teachers starting out who are in their first 1 to 5 years in the profession, 40% of them told us that they always struggle to cover their living expenses. I know we've talked mostly about teachers, but there is another group of educators I do want to highlight here, and that is paraprofessionals. You know, their salary is pretty low, and 60% of the paraprofessionals who participated in our survey said they always struggle to make ends meet. So that is just one of the, I think, underlying stresses that the educator workforce is facing. In response, a number of educators and teachers do extra work. 32% of them have taken second jobs, so they're working outside of the district. They're also taking on additional responsibilities in the district. So that may be, sometimes it comes with a leadership role, but often it's taking on extra work at the end of the school day. They may be doing work for the district or for their school over the summer. And then some of them reported to us that they were kind of going out and kind of starting their own businesses. A lot of them are doing things like private tutoring. Several people reported that they had baking businesses on the side. So they're really looking for how they make ends meet while doing this very important full-time job. One of the factors that we also explored to kind of what some of those financial pressures are is student loan debt. And again, I know this is a challenge for young people across the state. This is not unique to educators, but this is certainly affecting people who are interested in becoming teachers. When we looked across all of our survey respondents, 66% of them took on student loan debt to either earn their bachelor's degree or their certification, their initial certification. But again, we see some variation based on age. So those folks who entered the profession in the 90s were less likely to have to take on student loan debt, and they had lower student loan debt than people who have gone through training programs more recently. Over the last 15 years, we've really seen that about 3/4 of young people coming out earning their degrees to have student loan debt. And the amount of student loan debt also varies. So again, we've seen those teachers who graduated in the 90s or perhaps even earlier, their student loan debt was lower. And as college costs have risen over the last 2 decades. The student loan debt has increased. And this is not unique to Georgia. You know, this is really in line with national data, just with the rise in college costs. But it is certainly a concern for us. We don't want any barriers. If someone is really interested in teaching, they think that's the field for them, we don't want the cost of a college tuition to prevent them from going into the profession. Excuse me, shifting gears, we also looked at, going back to one of the points that Chairman Hickman made, just about the workload. Teachers' workload more and more has been added to their plate. Over half of teachers reported that their workload is not manageable most of the time or all of the time. And when we looked at that and kind of broke it down by grade level, we saw some variation. So our teachers in that K-5 group, they were most likely to say that their workload was not manageable. And kind of when I saw that data, I thought, well, now what is happening with this group? And it's speculation, but I do wonder, we're asking a lot right now of that particular group of teachers. You know, last year they rolled out new curriculum standards in math. They are also, many of them right now, doing training in structured literacy. Many of them are working on new curriculum, as again with the Early Literacy Act. Many districts are implementing new curriculum, so they're learning that. And they're preparing to roll out new ELA standards next year. And to be very, very clear, the feedback that Paige has had from teachers about all of these initiatives has been very positive. People are very supportive of this work. They absolutely want to see children succeed. It's just, it's a lot happening all at once. We also looked at, and this kind of references some of the things that other folks have already said, the importance of school leaders. On the upside, about three quarters of classroom teachers said that their school leaders were somewhat supportive or supportive. And we know that this is important. Again, if you have a great leader who is supportive, you are more likely to stay. So that is definitely a highlight of our data. But we also wanted to kind of see how leadership intersected with some of the other issues that came up. And this slide really points at the intersection between school leaders and job satisfaction. So we can see here that those teachers who said that their school leaders were supportive were much more likely, a much higher proportion of them reported being satisfied with their jobs than that group of teachers who said, no, my leader is not supportive. And as you can see, I think it was only 2% of those teachers said that they were satisfied with their jobs. We also asked them about kind of some of the staffing challenges and whether they had some staffing concerns in their own schools and whether those concerns were major or minor, or maybe not a concern at all, and looked at how that school leader impacted those staffing concerns. And I don't think this will be a surprise. Again, teachers who reported that their school leaders were not supportive also talked about there's higher attrition. Higher attrition is a major problem in my school. They talked about staff shortages. Again, if you reported that your administrator was not supportive, they also saw higher levels of shortages and higher levels of new teachers. So clearly, there is that intersection. But I do want to step back and say, having lifted up the importance of school leaders, I'm not sharing this information to be critical of those school leaders. One of the things that we know and that we've heard from our members, we have school leaders in the membership, the principalship and those school leader roles, they are incredibly complex. They are incredibly hard. It takes time to learn to do them really well and to grow into being that great supportive leader. And so our aim in highlighting the importance of school leaders is to lift up the need, again, to really train them, provide strong training as they're moving into those roles, and then strong support when they enter them. You know, we know how important it is in that first or second or third year for a new teacher to have a strong mentor and strong induction supports, and we would argue that new leaders need the same kinds of supports. This question, the answer to this question, why do educators leave the profession? This is actually data from our survey last fall, though I don't think it would have changed in the intervening 12 months. When we asked them, let's see, the third reason was salary. Salary does not top the list. We know it's a concern. Obviously, they're struggling to make ends meet, but it's not their top concern, though it is a factor. Student behavior was number 2. And this is an issue that we have heard repeatedly across the years. This issue predates the pandemic, but it has certainly gotten worse, as we've seen, and I'm sure you are all familiar with the rising mental health needs and behavioral challenges that children are bringing to the classroom. And it's causing a lot of challenges for classroom teachers. They are not mental health professionals. They need additional support so that children who have additional needs, they can be identified very quickly, and the appropriate support and interventions be provided to those kids. The student behavior is definitely a challenge. And then burnout. And that is kind of an amorphous category, that captures a lot of things, but we know that teachers are just, many of them, getting to the point of just exhaustion and questioning. There are many benefits they are feeling from teaching. When you ask them why they stay, hands down, it's that satisfaction from connecting with children and providing them with new opportunities to learn and grow. But they're still facing some exhaustion, frankly. We also, working with a team of teachers who are PAGE members, and have thought about, I went too far. Thought about what are some kind of practical steps to take. And I don't want to steal Matt's thunder because I know he's going to do some big picture ones. But we thought, what are some practical steps that could be taken to begin to alleviate some of these challenges? All of this is complex. There is not a single silver bullet that will solve everything. But to start thinking about what are some of the things that we can do to start chipping away and making the profession more manageable and more appealing to folks. The first is restoring funding for professional development. That piece of the QBE formula has been downsized, so we would encourage you to consider restoring it to its initial funding level, what it had been when QBE was created. That would provide some additional resources, both to make sure that those building leaders have the appropriate training and support, and also, with the literacy work underway, teachers need a lot of intensive support for that. So we would encourage you to consider that. We would also encourage you to consider restoring the HOPE financial aid programs. Originally, when HOPE was created, there were several aid programs that targeted one for undergraduate students who were pursuing degrees in teaching and a second for master's degree students. There was also, for a brief period of time, a HOPE program for paraprofessionals to help them complete their degree and gain certification. We would also very much urge you to consider increasing funding for those mental health staff. Again, coming back to that second top issue, that student behavior. Again, we need more professionals in school buildings and in districts who can provide that support. Right now we're funding one school social worker for every 2,475 students. So really kind of looking at the mental health professionals that we have available in our districts and making sure that that number aligns with the needs of the students that we have. And finally, kind of coming back to that workload manageability, one of the challenges, my goodness, we have been hearing this for years, one of the frustrations that teachers have is how frequently they lose planning periods. There are lots of different reasons for this, but one factor is because they're being pulled, they're losing their planning period to cover because a colleague is out. A colleague is sick, is home with a child, for whatever reason, the colleague is gone. So they are giving up their planning period. One of the challenges has been that it is very hard to attract and pay substitutes. Substitute pay has not increased since the QBE was passed in 1985. So at that point, districts received or were allotted $150 to cover the cost of a substitute for 8 days. That works out to $18.75 a day. That hasn't changed. So again, that's not going to fix everything, but looking for small steps to take that can start to have an impact and make a difference and make things a little bit easier, both in the classroom and at the district level. So,
Right.
and you also have, both for me and for Margaret, just one glass. You have the survey. The next survey will be coming out, and I should preview it. We are asking questions about school safety and the implementation of the Literacy Act, so that may just put that on your radar screen that will be coming out. And please don't hesitate to contact either myself or Margaret if you have any questions about this or anything else.
Thank you so much. Very, very, very good. Is Dana here? Oh. No. Would you please introduce yourself, please, and from the Georgia Department of Excellence in
Yes,
Education?
Matt Smith, Director
Smith.
of Policy and Research at GPEE, which stands for the Georgia Partnership for Excellence in Education.
Thank you, Matt.
The good thing is I could sub in for Data because that is a name that could be a man or a woman's name, right? But let's see. So I promised in advance that we didn't coordinate together, but I'm focusing more on what's happening in schools and districts. And so how we can think about the legislative role in fostering more conducive environments at the local level. So today I'll be looking at 3 emerging strategies. Before we get started, though, I wanted to inform you about the EdQuest initiative. It is a 10-year, long-range education economic development plan where we've identified with our colleagues at other state agencies and nonprofit organizations about how education and workforce development can be the catalyst for promoting individual well-being, the resilience of our communities, of course, our resilience of educators as well, and importantly for legislators too, how we can continue to promote our advantaged position in the global economy. The idea that all 3 of these things are important, from individuals to communities to how we situate ourselves statewide and internationally as well. One thing that I wanted to highlight, even though teacher recruitment and retention is one of 8 priorities, our North Star is ensuring that 65% of Georgians aged 25 to 64 have earned some kind of post-secondary credential. I don't mean 2- and 4-year degrees solely. I also mean occupational licenses, completing apprenticeships, short-term certificates. I'm sure you've heard from Mark Peavy at the Technical College System, even micro-credentials, ones that might take 1 to 3 months and can promote immediate workforce value. And so when we talk about post-secondary credentials, it's really crucial that we talk about how schools, and more narrowly, how teachers can support the attainment of this goal. Why we picked this goal? It's so important because by 2033, we looked at the kind of labor projections, and some of those good wage jobs that do not require a post-secondary credential are being eliminated. They won't exist with great regularity in 10 years. So again, I kind of zoomed out. We're going to zoom back into teacher retention. And so the underlying goal for EdQuest as it relates to teacher recruitment and retention is increasing the teacher retention of early career educators. And by early career educators, that's defined as having completed a teacher preparation program up into 5 years of teaching. And so that's our 0 to 5 kind of band, if you will. And so our idea is, how do we expand access to high quality preparation experiences like internships, residencies, and apprenticeships? And how can we generate a cadre of teacher leaders that would support these high quality experiences that are happening in the classroom? So as you very well know, there is a high cost to turnover. It's not just a financial cost, there's a human cost as well. But let's focus first on the financial cost. It's maybe easier to quantify, at least in dollar terms. We know that when a teacher does not stay in the profession for at least 5 years, that on average the district spends $15,000 over the next 5 years training up and inducting new teachers. And so the idea is that if we can increase retention rates, those dollars that might have been tapped for induction and training and dealing with that churn could be devoted to other programs like teacher preparation, teacher professional development, and the like. Also, there's a human cost. When teacher turnover is high, school and student achievement suffers. We also talk about, and Chairman Hickman talked about as well, is that we have over the last 4 years about 60% superintendent turnover and about 40% principal turnover and about 40. So you're starting to see there's a cascading effect that we need to deal with as well. And that's why teacher leadership programs will be so important. I'll talk about that in a minute. The third thing is that there's kind of a cultural cost as well. Working conditions suffer. The culture might not be as positive in a school. And again, that is another kind of systemic factor that also has a negative impact, not just on teacher turnover, but on student achievement. So the first two models I'm going to talk about are residencies and apprenticeships. And so these are emerging models that we're seeing districts, especially in the metro Atlanta, kind of look at. And so residencies, I do want to be clear, residencies can be through traditional programs, and sometimes we've called kind of your classic student teaching kind of approach or internship be called a residency. And what that means is that districts are working closely with preparation programs to increase the amount of support that they're giving those teacher candidates. And so I wanted to draw your attention to that when we talk about residencies, when we talk about it in Georgia, it could mean those residencies for traditionally prepared candidates, but it could also mean as well those that maybe have a baccalaureate degree and need 1 to 3 years of job embedded training, and then they become fully licensed teachers. And so I just wanted to kind of key in on that, because you're going to hear from folks to talk about residencies. People that are kind of being parachuted into the state might be talking about residencies in a different mindset than what we define in Georgia. So I just wanted to be clear about that. Apprenticeships are a fairly new model, especially as it relates to teaching. The first approved program from the federal level was in Tennessee, and I'll be covering that in a minute. What was really crucial about that is that the Tennessee program allows for, what's important about the Tennessee program is that people that don't have a bachelor's degree can get intensive training. And you'll see, again, that we don't have to design our program after Tennessee necessarily, but look, that second slide, 6,000 hours of paid job-embedded training and 1,800 hours minimum of lead instruction. So they're going to be a teacher of record. When we're thinking about 1,800 hours, that is more than a year if we're talking about from a 9-month teaching load. And so the idea is that 6,000 hours is 4 years of training. And the idea that as an apprentice, then they get a bachelor's of science in education. They have that portable credential, so they're not just an apprentice where they need to stay in their district or stay in their state. They're able to have full portability throughout the country. Now, of course, we want to keep them in Georgia, but that does allow them to see themselves in the profession more. What's crucial about residencies and apprenticeships that I wanted to highlight is that not only is there job-embedded training, there's a more collaborative environment, there's more coaching, especially with apprenticeships, it's on-the-job training. You're not having to quit a job, take on student loan debt, and figure out a way to make teaching work for you. In many cases, they're paid at least at the step 0 level. So the idea would be that at the very least, their training is covered and they're getting paid around $40,000 to $45,000 a year in most cases. And so that helps reduce barriers, it helps expand access, and helps increase affordability. Another one that I think is really important, this is the third strategy I'm highlighting, is what we call advanced teacher roles. And so North Carolina is well known for this program. They actually had a legislative initiative where they said, we're going to put in about $10 million a year in competitive grants that districts can apply for, and they can figure out how to pay teachers more if they take on more students. If they want to co-teach, if they want to provide coaching and mentoring to teachers, if they want to be what we call interventionists, meaning that for part of the day they teach their normal class load, but then for other parts of the day they co-teach or they provide intensive support and tutoring to teachers. And it's really interesting because if you see the colors, those indicate the different cohorts. And there have been 7 different cohorts, and it runs the gamut of your most highly urbanized areas as well as those counties that are very much rural. You see everything from the mountain to the coast being represented. And they've really been able to have some great recognition of effective strategies with a comparatively low state investment. I mean, we're talking about $10 million. We know money doesn't grow on trees, but the idea that they're able to look at their salary schedule, look at how they're supporting teachers, how they're credentialing teachers, it's really great. And we're starting to see that neighboring districts, even if they don't get the competitive grants, are saying, okay, how can we do like our neighbors did, and how can we be potentially innovative? And in many respects, that's kind of a legislative role, right? To give them the permission, the inspiration to do something that they haven't done before. So how do we move forward? We have 3 recommendations. One thing that I wanted to kind of contextualize for you is that there are state agency and legislatively driven policies that districts can leverage. We're not building from scratch, okay? One thing that's really important is that for teacher leaders in particular, this third recommendation, what's really crucial is that we already have a lead professional and advanced teacher professional credentials and certification that would allow for districts to form these formal roles and to be able to pay their teachers according to meeting these levels of competence that are demanded by that certificate. And so that's already available. The extent to which that's happening is low, but that doesn't mean that we can't encourage them to use what's already available. Another thing that Chairman Hickman talked about earlier is the idea of district flexibility. All but one district across the whole state has a strategic waiver school system flexibility. But what we would really recommend is to say, let's be really crucial in the same way we tell students to show their work. Show us what the strategy is, not just that you're going to check off that you're going to waive the salary schedule or you're going to waive certification. Tell us why that strategy is going to yield a positive benefit for teachers and for students. And then more esoterically, maybe consolidation of funds. That's a federal flexibility that we hope that more school districts leverage so that they're able to pay for teacher training as well as find ways to leverage federal resources to provide salary supplements for teachers. But really, if there's one thing that I want you to take away from this presentation, it's interesting that it's kind of like that movie Field of Dreams, Build It and They Will Come. The idea that if we create these formal teacher leadership roles and we really expand access to residencies and apprenticeships, that's going to necessarily require that we build a cadre of teacher leaders to coach and mentor these teachers. And so it's one of these kind of virtuous cycles where if we do our job well and we invest in teacher leaders, they will then invest in their younger peers. And the theory of action would hold then that if we're really being strategic and intentional, that over time, that would mean that we would see increases in teacher retention. And so the idea is that this isn't a panacea, not an immediate fix, but the whole idea that over the long range, over the next 10 years, we can see ways where increasing teacher retention statewide from 65% in 5 years to 75% would allow us to really kind of reorganize how we prepare and support teachers. And so I'm going to leave it there, and we can answer any questions you have during that portion.
Thank you, sir. Excuse me. If all the presenters would come back forward, The first question will come from Senator Beach. If y'all would come back up in front, please. It's like sitting in front of class now, or sitting on the front row of church. Yes, sir. What number are you, Senator? 14. Yes, sir.
I have a question in the.
Yeah, Senator, we got 30 minutes, so
Okay, just
we
real
got plenty
quick.
of time for a lot of questions.
The banker that wants to become a teacher, that was in, I think, this presentation. I want to tell a quick story if I could.
Yes, sir.
My wife was an accountant. She had an MBA. She decided when my son went to high school, he was doing a lot of golf travel. She wanted to teach so she could be with him in the summers. She taught at Milton High School for 5 years, glowing reviews, but she wasn't certified. And after 5 years, she was not allowed to teach anymore. She now is COO of Kingsridge Christian School, so she stayed in education. She did very well. But we lost a good public school teacher at Milton High School because she didn't have a certification. She was an accountant, CPA, and an MBA. And I just think that's kind of ridiculous at times. And she got 5 years of glowing reviews from her folks. So my question is, if this banker is a very successful banker, wants to teach a finance class, but is not certified, he can only teach for 5 years. Is that correct?
So they do have to go ahead and get certification. The advantage of this grant is that it actually helps to offset that cost. And there are some flexibility and certainly some progress since that time that allows that certification to be achieved a little bit more easily. But you are exactly right in that we've got to address how we allow second career teachers to come back and it not be cost preventative to choose to teach. That there are easier avenues and access to be able to obtain that certification. And there are lots of different pathways to getting certification. So an absolute, this is a one-size-fits-all. It's not really how it works. It depends on the certification. It depends on what courses you're teaching. Depends on if a candidate is able to pass the GACE or not and how that impacts their timing to achieve that certification.
Well, let me ask you this. If for example, I'm 63 years old. I'm not going to go back and get certified. But if I wanted to teach a government class, I've been in government I've been elected since 1999. I know a little bit about government. Would I be allowed to go teach a government class, or would I not be allowed to do that?
You'd be allowed initially to teach a government class on a provisional certificate, but there is an expectation that to remain in the teaching field, you have to obtain that certification, again, through various avenues, passing the GACE, completing a TAP certification, strategic waivers allow some flexibility for that. But ultimately, yes, there is a certification expectation to remain long-term. And I'll turn this over to
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll just make this comment. I think we're losing a lot of talent and a lot of opportunity of people that would like to teach, even if it's just a couple classes, that are not going to go back to college and get certified, that are very, very successful in their professions and can bring a lot to the table. And I think we get so caught up in certification. And look, I'm all for certification. I'm all for having the proper credentials. But I think the success in the business world should be able to be, if someone wants to give their time and teach. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
If you'd like, I can address it just a little bit with the certification. There is flexibility around it. The main purpose for the certification is for the salary schedule, to stay on that
Microphone.
state salary schedule.
Come on, microphone, please.
And I'll introduce myself as well. I'm Carrie Pritchard, Assistant Director of Policy for the Department of Education. So there's flexibility for all but 2 districts in the state when it comes to certification. It is a local decision whether or not you want to allow teachers to remain in the classroom without that certification, but there is a financial component to that certification with a state salary schedule. So there is a piece there that does connect to the financial side of it. So it isn't worth, not that it's not worth to keep a quality teacher, it just can be a financial burden on the district in order to maintain and retain that teacher without getting those extra state funds to follow the salary schedule. So there's that kind of piece there with it. And then we also have, it's not that you have to go back to college. We have the GTAP, the Georgia
GCASE.
where it's a shortened path to get your certification, and it does have a cost, and that cost varies across the state from about $1,500 to about $3,000. So it varies through the state. So just kind of wanted to clarify a little bit on that.
Senator Brass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this may be for you too. But so don't the local districts have the ability to waive that certification? Because I know back home at our college and career academy, they use work history to kind of count towards that, and I think they waive their certification. Now it's in a I guess a state chartered school, so it may be a little different, but I would think if we could do that in that type of setting, is there any reason why we could not do it in a traditional school setting? It is the same. Okay, that's what I thought.
Probably urge those teachers to get their teacher certification after, I think it's like 3 years.
I don't think they do, but
Are you talking about Central?
yes.
Yes. I'll ask Mark to verify, but I'm pretty sure
Okay.
there is a push. But there is flexibility around what you're saying, like being able for the district to say, but with Central Education Center, it's a college and career academy, they're a little bit different.
The first in the state of Georgia.
First in the state, yes, sir.
We're very proud of that.
Yes. And it's a fantastic program.
It is. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And my question, I'm not really sure who it is because some kind of it went across different presentations, and so as far as retention and teacher retention, and of course what we came out with was the number 2 reason teachers are leaving are student behavior. No, okay, I'm putting on my juvenile probation officer hat here for a minute because that's I said I was an educator for 30 years, but I was my discipline was self-discipline, teaching kids how to understand what they had to do to stay out of trouble. So my question is, if we have, I would like to see some charts on that. I mean, we got the workforce and we talk about pay, but pay was the 3rd one on the list. So where's the one where we're looking at because if it's behavioral, then we're looking at societal issues. And so that's what I would like more in-depth understanding of what are the societal issues, because a lot of this crosses so many, it's not just teachers, it's touching everybody in every household in Georgia. So I would like to know what is it behavioral with the kids? What are we doing different or not doing differently that we can tap into, that we can make corrective measures so that those behavioral things aren't running teachers off? I guess I really don't have that question. But the one question I did was advocating for the teacher increases beyond 21 years. Who set that at 21 years? Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure. You don't have to point at me, but it was more than just me.
Thank you, Senator.
Legislature.
Chairman Hustetler.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kind of a two-part here. The first part would be for the Department of Education. The 90.08% number, I'm trying to make sure I understand this right. Is that being retained to teach in Georgia or retained to teach in a particular school system?
Retained to teach in Georgia.
Okay, that's kind of what I guessed it was. So then on the GOSA numbers, one thing maybe for the future that might be helpful is I forget how many city school systems we've got. I think it's less than 20. But all 3 of my counties have them. Mm-hmm. And it would be good to see the difference between those city and county, just to see, where, is one here, are they both about the same, that kind of thing. And the last part along those lines is when we talked about not being supported by administrators. And I've had a couple instances where a new superintendent came in, did a purge. In one case, one of them they purged went to Piedmont, Alabama, where he was the teacher or the principal of the year, and his school was school of the year, and then got national awards. It would be interesting to look at clusters when we see a big cluster somewhere, trying to drill down into the root of it, and those are more comments of stuff I would like to see in the future. I know you have 15 minutes and you guys can't tell us that stuff in that time, but maybe it's something we could look forward to in the future.
So one place you might find some more disaggregated data if you want to dig into it is on Georgia Insights on the Georgia DOE website, and you can actually disaggregate by district, city, school system. And I'll just mention this in terms of our new redesigned teacher and school climate surveys that will begin this year. One of the pieces of that, listening to Teacher Voice, is to utilize those surveys to provide more actionable data, which is getting to more of some of what you're talking about, is really thinking about the why behind it and where are the specific areas. So hopefully after this next year of our surveys that we will implement across the state, we'll also have another piece of the dynamic to put along with our collaborators that helps paint a better, more in-depth picture around some of those topics you talked about.
Yeah, and the reason it's important to me is in both cases, the superintendent was eventually run off, but there was some devastating results that took years to repair on that kind of thing. And that's something we need to try to figure out how to avoid when we talk about it. Over a fourth of the teachers don't feel like they're supported by their administrators.
Thank you. Chairman Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate everybody coming today. This has been very enlightening. But I had a question surrounding teacher pay. I know Governor Kemp has led in increasing teacher pay since 2019, and we're, I think, the highest in the Southeast. But just wanted, and I know y'all touched on it some, but has that helped some with teacher retention, or are there other areas or other, like, it was surprising to me about the dealing with, teachers, substitute teachers that come in and they get paid so little, what we could do in those areas as well to increase pay across the board more so.
I was going to say, I can share.
You have to use the mic.
Come here, please.
So anecdotal feedback from Page members, yes, I would say that those pay raises have absolutely helped. And I think every educator, regardless whether you're in a leadership role or you're in the classroom, would say that those pay raises have made a big difference. I think part of the challenge is that in those years leading up to that first pay raise, I think it was from 2009 through 2017, there hadn't been any pay raises. So they really were significant in helping to make up that lost ground, and we were really moving, and then we hit inflation. So I think some of those inflationary pressures kind of mitigated the positive impact of the pay raises. But to be very clear, please understand that has been a very valuable investment, and I do absolutely think that it has helped. And I think, the fact that we are a leader in the Southeast, and we may even be at the national level or the national average or above. So absolutely. So please know that has made a difference. It's just, again, the teachers are facing the same financial pressures that all Georgians are.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And then I had one other question dealing with planning periods. I've heard that from many, many teachers in my district. I mean, it seems to be one of the bigger issues, as far as, I've even had one teacher, she was hoping to come today, retired teacher from Gwinnett, but ended up being sick. But was talking about even a virtual day, which I get that maybe at high school, but you start talking about elementary and middle school, that'd be very difficult, especially with my three kids. And when we went through COVID and how the struggles we had, which, I'm a real estate guy by trade. So, but, having to teach them at home virtually didn't work so well. In person was much better option for them. But I keep hearing time and time again about planning periods and that being taken away from teachers for, vast number of reasons, and how we could support that potentially to guarantee that through legislation. We'd love to talk with y'all more about that as well.
Absolutely, and that ties. We have the same feedback from educators, and some of it. Sometimes you lose a planning period because you're in professional development, right? So sometimes there are good reasons why you're being asked to give up a planning period, but it comes back to wanting to make sure that school leader kind of balances those competing pressures, so that if they need to schedule a professional learning day, it's not taking 4 of your planning periods over the course of the week. But yes, I think that there are definitely opportunities, because it's not a real easy automatic fix, but definitely we would be on board for having that conversation.
The substitute is an issue.
Yes.
The substitute teacher pay falls into that as well, where public school is there to, one of the main tenets of public school is the health and safety and protection of those students. You need to have an adult around at all times. And so trying to ensure that there's an adult around at all times can impede the planning period. So at least that's, in my experience of the complaints and frustration is, like, my planning period was taken away because there wasn't someone to do
There wasn't
cafeteria
lunch coverage.
or to cover the classroom. Yes. Yeah. So that substitute pay is an issue. I know in my district, I think it's $12 an hour with a maximum of $60 for the day.
And that's wrapped up in the QBE?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and of course, districts will have to supplement because you can't hire a substitute for
Right.
$18 a day.
Right.
So that's really very now much dependent on districts' local resources, what they're able to pay substitutes. So of course.
And I see that
that's gonna
vast
vary.
difference. I
Yeah.
represent Gwinnett, and Barrow County, Gwinnett, funded very well. They got the ability to. Barrow, they struggle with that, and SRO officers and many other things. So, I mean, I see those vast differences, but yeah, I would love to work with y'all more on that. Okay.
I think if we've said so many, thank you, that's great questions, I know Chairman Earl and I have been talking, and we are going to look at the QBE formula. He and I've got a lot of concern about, and just like y'all do. I'm not very proud that the average is 41,000. That is terrible in itself. And I want to thank Governor Kemp again, and we've said so many times in this room across the state, for increasing teachers' salaries. But if they are nowhere close where they need to be, whenever our accounting firm starts out 4 years people at $60,000 a year in Statesboro, Georgia, and we're average. And keep in mind, average is average. That means there's a lot of stuff below that. Yeah. So that's a critical thing. So, I've been. A lot of people got questions. Senator Orr.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to say there's an overwhelming amount of knowledge and experience and dedication in this room. The people that have been presenting to us, and very much appreciate your professionalism and the depth that you're able to look into and analyze and bring information to us. Don't make this the last time. I'm sure you won't. I had a couple of questions. One is that the Georgia Professional Standards Commission last year, you all will recall, and this really reflects the comments that were brought, the findings that were brought about minority students having minority teachers and a 13% difference in outcomes for those kids. But the Professional Standards Commission removed all references to diversity, equity, cultural responsivity, and inclusivity from the teacher preparation standards. What are we doing? Could that impact the development of our ability to recruit and retain teachers who would be a real benefit to student advancement? What's the impact of that going to be? Are we going to blink at that and go on, or so that's one question. Particularly in light of y'all's great findings on the difference, for minority students. And then the other is that opportunity funding. Some of us were on an education panel a couple of years ago and went around the state. And this comes up over and over. And we're one of the few states that does not do opportunity funding to address the needs in the high poverty counties and schools and students from impoverished backgrounds. Have you all, any of you had the opportunity to study that or compare that with other states? Because we're one of the few states that doesn't do that in our QBE approach.
Thank you.
Anybody going to respond?
Anybody want to respond to that? That's just a fact, isn't it? That's just a fact. You can't respond to a fact. That's a fact.
Well, it's just, can you all be bringing some data from other states to show? I mean, we're one of the, how many states do that, or how many states don't do it? That is targeted funding for the high poverty areas, where that's where there's the most failures, most dropouts, the worst teacher retention, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's, making breakthroughs there really changes the profile.
Thank you. Senator Harrell.
Look at QBE stuff, isn't that right, Chair?
Senator Harrell. Don't you? You don't have one? Okay. Senator Halpern. Oh, I had the wrong number.
This is also for GOSA. Thank you, everybody. I think this is really sets a great stage for us to figure out where we can take action and how we can improve these outcomes, not just for teachers, but of course our students and ultimately our workforce. I have a question for GOSA because I'm looking at the data and I think that this is really interesting. We're now in the 24-25 school year, so this data ends in 23. So we're 2 school years right away, and I'm just wondering, how much do you think COVID might influence what we will see in, you know, if we already had the 23-24 data, even anecdotally, since we don't have the numbers, do we feel that COVID actually helped with retention of teachers for job security? Or do we think, like, would we see this trend continue? Or do we think that it would actually change if we had an additional year of data?
So we are going to get, can y'all hear me okay? We're going to be getting the newest year of the data, I guess, in the next couple of weeks. And this report, our next iteration of this report will be around in January. The data person in me hesitates to make any speculation for what you're saying. But anecdotally, I don't know if we could conflate the COVID year with also just what Claire was talking about, the economic changes.
Yeah.
And teaching being kind of seen as this recession-proof job, right? So I'm not quite sure what we're going to be seeing. We will definitely keep you posted. The nature of this report and the data is that it's lagged about 2 years, and that's just how agencies report their data to us. It's in that fashion. So as soon as we get it, we'll be circulating, and we can always update y'all with these findings with the newest year. But yeah, I do think that these might be slightly altered data with the new inclusion of the year.
Thank you. And then, go ahead.
Reviewing data from other states too, we see that there is not just a lag in the data, but lag in attrition. So the idea is when you are hunkering down in a public health crisis, and you're just like, I'm going to just make this work, what ends up happening is, to Claire's point, you have increased burnout, and that kind of entropy kind of takes place much later than the actual kind of traumatic event. And so we see in other states that there might be a slight uptick. We thought personally, demographically, that it would happen immediately, but there usually is a lag of 1 to 2 school years before we see a greater attrition rate.
Thank you. And then just one point
Yes,
on, because we were just talking about the planning time and planning periods, and I just want to say maybe for our committee, that's something that we could look into, this, because that's a strategic waiver conversation, so I just want to put that on the table also, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of questions. Starting with the GOSA data, I recognize the highest producers, and those are the largest university system units. Is there a university system unit that disproportionately provides teachers? Or do we have any units that are out there focusing on teacher preparation? That would be a question. I'd ask you to take a look at that. And I acknowledge that UGA and Kennesaw and Georgia State being the largest universities in the system, they'll have the largest programs, but they would not necessarily have the largest contribution based on their student population. For Page, I'm looking at student loan debt, which is just mind-boggling. So after 30 years of work experience, over 50% of teachers still have student loan debt. Is that correct?
We asked them, had they taken on student loans?
Oh, thank you. So
they shouldn't have paid it off.
Right, exactly. So I was trying to understand, why would 50% have student loan debt after 30 years?
No, it was just, did they, in earning their initial degree in education,
Did they have student loan debt at some point in time? It would be helpful also for us to know how much debt our teachers have incurred and are currently having to address. That might be helpful. On your workload management information, thank you very much. And I agree, our workload is a challenge for all of our teachers from K through 2, second grade, or middle grades, or what have you. You lump together sometimes and never. And I would ask that you maybe break that out so we can understand the difference between sometimes having a problem and never, right? So help us with that. And then finally, for the Georgia Department of Education, is there the potential for a teacher to enjoy any salary increase after 21 years of service?
Locally, yes.
Locally, yes.
The state-funded portion caps out at 21.
Caps out at 21. And then so the question becomes one of how many school systems acknowledge that is a worthy investment? Do we know?
That data, but we can look at it. That might be more of a potentially a TRS, the teacher retirement system question as well. So the average, teachers go 25 and a half years is the average. So
right.
After 25 and a half years, they're retired.
They retire.
So there might be, we'd have to look a little bit more if there's a correlation between that and...
I would just like to know if there are mechanisms in place for teachers to enjoy a salary increase beyond the 21-year step.
That is 100% local.
Thank you.
Wow. Senator Sims, she's been so patient down there.
I almost went to sleep.
But she's a former teacher too, right?
And principal. And principal. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for your report. Just wanted to ask or to add to the conversation. It's almost impossible to go forward with anything in education without those people that prepare, teachers, teacher education, deans of education. And most times when we're sitting and talking about education and how we educate teachers, how we retain them, we need to have those individuals in the room as well, because they're the ones that do the training, the preparation, and all of the above. It's, and I think Senator Burns kind of touched on it. We see where the larger universities are preparing teachers. What about those smaller institutions that have not been mentioned but do prepare a significant number of teachers? And how about some that have even lost their teacher education programs? Why has the state of Georgia allowed this to happen, knowing that we struggle from year after year trying to get teachers into the classrooms? That's mind-boggling to me. As we discuss this, now somebody mentioned Georgia Leads did a pilot program. Who was that? Where are these pilot programs located? Can you tell me? Because most times we don't get considered in Southwest Georgia. That's why I'm asking.
Dirty County, I believe, is one of...
Dirty County or Doherty? Okay.
And these would be districts that are participating. It may not be fully every school in their district. It could be selected schools, but Gordon County, Liberty County, Muskogee County, Dooley County, Clay County, Daughtry, APS, Griffin Spalding, Jefferson County, Savannah Chatham, Lowndes,
good mix.
and Brooks County began with us initially, and then this year in what we're calling our Cohort B pilot, we added Atlanta, Unbound Academy, Baconton, Richmond County, Candler County, and Worth County.
Great.
And what we're doing right now is a really focused informational approach to ensuring that all of our districts in our state are aware of the opportunity to participate in Georgia Leads, and they will have an opportunity December, January to begin showing interest, and then we'll have a Cohort C where we'll allow additional school districts to come on and begin that Georgia Leads program process.
Thank you so much. I feel that there is a need for stronger leadership in our schools, in our public schools, and at the school board level. There's not a whole lot we can do about that as legislators from the school board level, but as preparing and training those individuals that lead our schools, that's important. And we talked about teachers and their planning periods and other issues that they may have. School is a team effort. And you may not like what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. If they're just picking on that same teacher every day, I want you to come out and share this work. We have to learn how to share responsibilities. Everybody. I've mopped floors in schools, cleaned out dusty book rooms. I was the principal. I was the assistant principal. I was the teacher. And in order to make it work for our children and our communities, making them stronger, there is nothing wrong with saying at some point in time, you're going to have to, I'm a teacher and I'm not supposed to be, we are a team. And you have to learn to share the responsibilities in those buildings. But we really need to have our deans of education sitting at the table and listening to what you all are saying, because they're the ones that are training these teachers each and every day. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Senator James.
The good thing, Mr. Chairman and everyone, about being the last one is that all the questions already been asked. But I do have a quick question about, go back to certification. What were the two counties that, out of Georgia, 159, that don't comply with what everyone else?
What happens if they don't comply?
The two Title 20 no waiver, it's Webster and Beaufort City.
Okay. City schools. And then the other thing is I wanted to, I have a concern about the diverse folk that we have, students that we have throughout Georgia, and getting teachers, not just a minority teacher to teach an Asian child, or if you got a whole 2 or 3 classrooms of these kids, why can't you, I know that we do hire people who are from these different countries. So can you match them? Is it any way to match them? Because I know that many kids say that they want somebody to look like them to teach them. Okay, so now we have a diverse group of from all over the nation, all over the world rather. So I was just wondering if it's some kind of program to start matching the students. No, I mean, even if you don't do it on paper, can you? You know, because I know, like, I saw Gwinnett County, and I went in 2 or 3 schools, and I started students wanting to come and talk to me and saying that they wanted somebody to look like them. So anyway, I had to be the white elephant in the room. Last thing is the retirees. I've been working with the retirees for years and years. My mother and father were Atlanta Public School principals, and I taught there 11 years. Worst, the behavior is awful. But they want to come back to, you know, a lot of them retire. And after 5 years or so, they would love to come back and take a part-time job or something. But is it the General Assembly, is it us that makes the rules that would make it easier? Because right now they have to go through hoops. And then when they get there, you know, they're not even treated fairly sometimes. So I was just wondering if we could, is that us, Mr. Chairman, that would change some of the many things?
I think that we are actually, yes, ma'am, we are actually talking about some things like that. Actually, you know, House Member Jan Jones
Yes.
had the bill that allowed teachers to come back in math, science, and special ed.
The 3 highest need subject areas by RESA.
Yeah.
So it varies across the state. We wanted to make sure it was representative. But for the most part, it's math, science, special education, and you'll have ELA. And the one that's been creeping up that's been interesting is elementary, has been interesting. But one of our priorities at the department is looking to, instead of it just being those the highest need subject areas by RESA, recognizing that reading literacy is an issue statewide, mathematics is an issue statewide, as well as special education. So allowing those 3 to be kind of an automatic for a retired teacher to come back into the class. And it's into the classroom. It's not for administrative
That's what they
purposes
wanna do,
or for coaching or anything. It is for that teacher to go back into the classroom.
Well, that's very good to know because many of the teachers now are retiring much earlier. My mother's, be 94 years old. She's been going 20-something years. But there are some young people that are her friends. They call her for everything. Do you think I can get back? Do I have to just go and be a substitute teacher or something? So that they want to go back into the classroom. So I wanted to ask if we could do that, how we could do that. So thank you very much.
We've actually having some conversation about that situation. The Representative Pro Tem Jones's bill, you had to stay out a year, I think it is.
Correct.
And I don't know, and I think it's been successful. Been very successful. About 380 teachers, something like that, come back. So it's been successful. But I can't imagine being away from my job for a year and then coming back and trying to start my job over again. So I think we need to look at reducing that down to a reasonable period of time, 90 days. And I think we also need to look at expanding that from those 3 areas to civics, social studies. If a principal needs a teacher and we got an available teacher out there that's qualified, why not let him or her hire that person and come back into the school system?
Mr. Chairman, one last thing. I remember when Governor Zell Miller was here and he was about to leave. I think, didn't he do something with the Hope Scholarship where he said anyone who wants to go in the teaching profession could get Hope Scholarship and waive any other costs too? Y'all remember that? I don't know why it left. That was before my time too, but I was here in Georgia and I know what was going on.
Yeah, so
Oh,
no,
good.
there was in the original HOPE programs, there was a program for undergraduate students. It was kind of a supplemental kind of financial aid award. If you were an undergraduate pursuing a degree in education, you could, I believe it was in your last 2 years, I think. There was also a program if you were earning your master's degree, but for initial certification. So if maybe you had a degree in biology and were coming back to get your master's so that you could teach biology. There was a HOPE program that was for those graduates, but those were specific to high-need STEM fields. And then there was for a brief period, a HOPE program that would support paraprofessionals. And those, I think that only lasted a few years. The HOPE programs for the teacher candidates, they were part of the HOPE reforms, or those initiatives were eliminated during the HOPE reforms in, I believe it was 2013.
Do you think we should revisit it and look at
Paige
it?
is very supportive of that.
'Cause
We
it was
want
very-
to remove barriers to entering the profession.
Thank you.
I'll say too that Representative Hughley in the House also introduced a bill last year that would use HOPE dollars to support defraying the cost of student teaching. Because student teachers still have to pay tuition costs even though they're in schools, student teaching. And so
Do you remember the number?
And they also don't get paid. They don't get paid to student teach either.
Right. And in many cases too, there's a strong discouragement for you to pick up other jobs while you're student teaching, because in many cases it's
That's a
30 to
good point.
45 hours a week. You can't really pick up a second job.
Thank you.
Get that number.
I've got a question. You won't.
It didn't pass.
I'll give you one shot. Oh, I'm sorry.
Education is the largest portion of the state's budget.
Correct.
And when you are appropriating monies to programs, you have to look to see if those programs are actually working. And a lot of times we start and we stop. We start and we stop. But we have to dig deeper to see if those programs are actually working. Otherwise, the state is wasting money. Okay? And I don't know if we do a good enough job of that to see if what we are doing. That's why I say we need to have individuals at the table that are really at the root of this. We provide programs for people to do certifications. Then we certify them. They come and they stay. We pay for it. They come and they'll stay for a little while, and then they're gone. What are the reasons? Are we just continuously appropriating monies, losing this money when these folks don't come back? Because it's a net gain for us. So that's what I was going to say.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
I got one or two questions. I want to go to people. Would you tell us what do you think is the secret to teacher retention? We heard that salaries there, discipline, blah 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 type deal. What's the secret to teacher retention? Okay, let me come back to that. Okay, let me talk to DOE. What so many of our local, and I keep saying rural Georgia because it really is. So many of our rural Georgia people need more help with this teacher retention. What is the DOE doing to help rural Georgia retain teachers?
So one of the things that our Rural Education Innovation Team is really working on is they just received a grant where they are really working on expanding that teacher apprenticeship pipeline. So that's a very targeted effort that our rural districts have the opportunity to participate in. And I would just say, to the question too about what's the secret to teacher retention, I think it's really important to really think about that there are many layers to teacher retention. And it really depends on where an individual starts their journey as an educator. And so I think that for that reason, it is difficult to find a one-size-fits-all. So I think we have to be really intentional to have multiple layers to support the professional capacity of the teaching profession. And whether that's getting started as in a traditional pathway, or whether it's coming to education 5 or 10 years down the road as a second career educator, there's a place for all of those individuals in our organizations and our system. And I think that that's going to require us to have multiple layers that make it easier to get in and really honor their professionalism so that teachers will stay and remain in the profession.
Do you address that in orientation?
Wait, hold on.
Sorry.
I just wanted to add, it's been lifted up, the shockingly bad ratios that we have with school psychologists, school social workers,
Right.
those ancillary positions that are critical when we're looking at the levels of mental health issues among young people. And we could, I mean, the old saw about you just can't throw money at it. Well, guess what? About 9 out of 10 things that have been lifted up here as being successful or needing to fill the holes has to do with funding. We have 1985 levels of substitute teacher reimbursement. That's absurd.
It is.
And there's much that we can do. I mean, Janet Reno, bless her soul, she's not with us anymore, but she spoke. I heard her on how to address violence in schools, student behaviors. And she said it starts with good prenatal care. It starts with bonding, helping parents and bond and create successful family life for their children. But then it moves on up that you need to have a teacher brings professional teaching skills, but they cannot do all of the array. You all have lifted all of this up, but it's about more robust funding to put in the school counselors, school social workers. All those that deal with the societal impact on kids today, instead of leaving all that up to a teacher dealing with unruly children in the classroom. So,
Senator Burns. Thank
you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you're right. It's not a single issue. It's not a single issue thing. But I want to go back to the Page survey. Mm-hmm. And the number one issue was burnout, which really is an interesting catch-all. Yeah. Means I'm tired of doing this anymore. But the number two issue was student behavior. And at the end of the day, we're losing a lot of teachers because the children they're trying to educate are not prepared to receive it or not willing to receive it. I can't tell you how many teachers leave the public school environment, retire, and go to the private school environment,
That's right.
where they perceive, maybe not be true, but where they perceive the environment will be a student who is more appropriately ready to be taught. So I'm going to go back to my good friend Senator Payne and his experience with juveniles who have run afoul of the judicial system. We have to find a way to prepare students to be educated, and that starts in the family, it starts at home, but I would suggest the number one reason we're losing teachers in Georgia is because of student behavior.
Thank you, sir. Senator Payne, the last question.
Well, that was why I just was going to add to my friend, just to let, you know.
Well, I'm glad y'all are friends.
That is the one element that's often overlooked is, you know, we don't really discuss very often, but what is happening in society, what's happening in the family, what's happening in the community. And when you're talking about behavioral issues, it all starts at home. And self-discipline, learning self-discipline starts in the home. So if we're seeing an increase of kids that's becoming an issue with teachers, kids that don't have that capacity to behave, then where's the breakdown that we're not seeing? And that's why I was meaning we need to look deeper into what are the societal issues that are causing these things, and not just point fingers at teachers or point fingers at schools or juvenile probation officers, that matter, but what can we all collectively look at to do better that we're not doing, and see what we can, because if you just run in and say, you know, it's their fault or their fault or their fault, well, a lot of times you forget it might be your fault. And but you're not taking that into account because you're too busy pointing fingers at everybody else. So I just want to say that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. As a public service announcement, the Georgia Council on Literacy has 4 focus groups. Birth to 5, K to 3, are our colleges and universities teaching our teachers how to teach children to read, and community involvement. And what we see is one of the biggest problems going on now is lack of community involvement and lack of our communities recognizing exactly what Senator Payne is saying and Senator Burns said, that it is a family issue and a community issue. And until our communities get their arms around this, the teachers and educators can only do so much. But we've got to recognize that as a community. We've got 3 great people that have signed up to speak. Jordan Jones, thank y'all for being here. This is tremendous. Jordan Jones, Ariane Montgomery, and Jill Penn. So if y'all would come forward with Jordan first, and we'll give you about 3 to 5 minutes at most, okay? Yeah, that's perfect. And I know some of our guys have got to leave, but thank y'all so much for making the effort to be here today. This is a
See you later.
very, very good meeting. Jordan?
Yes.
Okay. And Jordan is with KinderCare.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Chairman Hickman and other esteemed members of this committee. On behalf of KinderCare Learning Companies, thank you for the opportunity to provide public comments to this joint study committee on Georgia's educator workforce. I know we're at the end, so I'll try to be brief, concise. KinderCare is an early childhood education company, and we proudly serve nearly 5,000 kids across about 40 high-quality early learning centers and sites in Georgia. And we are committed to serving all children, regardless of background, financial circumstances, and we're proud to serve our diverse group of children. Child care plays an essential role in Georgia by ensuring that parents can work while their children are educated, developed, and cared for in a safe and enriching setting. Unfortunately, as you all know, many parents struggle to both access and afford the child care that meets their needs, often leading to difficult decisions such as reducing work hours or leaving the workforce completely, right? This has negative consequences on the broader business community in Georgia and our statewide economy overall, while leaving families without resources that they need to thrive. Now, what exacerbates the access and affordability challenges in our industry further is the teacher shortage that states everywhere are facing. That said, I recognize that the focus of this committee may be specifically on K-12 teachers, but I also recognize that there's a separate study committee specifically established to unpack the challenges on child care and affordability. Nonetheless, I would still challenge this group to be thoughtful and considerate around strategies and investments that recognize the place that early learning teachers have in the pipeline of Georgia's educator workforce. I would also like to highlight that virtually all of KinderCare centers operate a Georgia Pre-K classroom, and the lead teachers for those classrooms must have bachelor's degrees. That said, many of our lead teachers in those programs have the education level to teach in K-12 settings, which kind of speaks to that pipeline. That aside, our comments today stem from our extensive operations throughout the state, our service of nearly 5,000 children, and our experience of working across 40 states plus DC. And seeing innovative approaches to meet the incredible child care needs of families, please consider us a partner in delivering high-quality early learning programming. Today, I'll focus my comments on what the state can do to support the child care workforce specifically, because we're talking about teachers. And to start off, just want to name it, the access to high-quality and affordable child care very clearly relies on an educated, well-compensated early child care workforce. Yet childcare remains one of the most underpaid sectors of the economy. In Georgia, the poverty rate for early educators is about 16.7%, which is close to 6 times as high as that of K-8 teachers. And while many childcare providers seek to raise wages and expand benefit offerings for their workers, the required tuition on families, which creates competing challenges for providers, exacerbates this concern even further. The lack of access to competency-based trainings and educational programs further limit the opportunities for staff and teachers to build the knowledge and skills they need to impact the quality of our programming. So this committee should consider policies that appropriately prepare, support, and compensate the early education child care workforce. And I have 3 examples of what those things could be, so I'll quickly go through those. Number 1 is child care assistance for early educators. Providing targeted tuition assistance for early educators is a successful and proven strategy to stabilize conditions in the child care market, and it can also improve workforce participation across the state. DeKalb, Department of Early Care and Learning, recently developed a pilot initiative on the child care tuition assistance for early educator program, which offered tuition assistance for child care teachers and staff who worked in licensed settings. As many as 12 other states developed similar initiatives as well, and I'll be happy to follow up with that list. So recommendation, we encourage the committee to consider the multifold benefits of expanding and extending this program, or one of the similar nature in the future. Policies such as automatic or just categorical subsidy eligibility or priority within the subsidy system for early educators would ultimately expand availability of care across the state because it reduces their cost. There is also a program in Georgia called the DeKalb Scholars Program. The committee should consider incentives supporting professional development among the early childhood workforce, namely through expanding that scholarship. Throughout the pandemic specifically, the state was able to adjust eligibility for that program, which increased the number of applicants and supported greater entry into the workforce for our teachers. Furthermore, as educators continue on their professional development pathway, they could decide to move on to that K-12 system, which further emphasizes the pipeline that we're trying to highlight. So we recommend that the committee consider to continue covering the cost of the CDA, the Child Development Associate, which is essentially that program, which is included through Teachstone, and retaining expanded eligibility for DeKalb scholars, just to increase the number of well-qualified and credentialed professionals, which improves the access and quality in our classrooms. Finally, one last program. This is providing credential-based bonus payments. So another opportunity to drive professional development is through DeKalb's salary bonus program, dedicated to early education professionals, rewarding early educators for their tenure and their credential attainment by outlining very explicit incentives and compensation parity is a proven strategy to improve quality in education settings. However, as it's currently administered, eligible recipients are required to have worked with their current employer for the past year and received their highest earned credential within 5 years of applying for the program. So we just recommend that the committee consider removing that timeline requirement for eligibility. This will better ensure support for the full capacity of highly trained and tenured professionals who may have received their credential earlier than the allotted time frame, which supports long-term retention. So, in closing, KinderCare Learning Companies greatly appreciates the opportunity to provide policy recommendations concerning the educator workforce in Georgia. We thank you for the work that y'all have already done in the 2024 session, and the work that you all will continue to do. And we look forward to working in partnership with this committee to increase access to affordable and high-quality child care, but specifically through supporting our educator workforce in Georgia. So thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Can you give us a copy of your remarks?
Absolutely, yeah. I'll follow up with all of
Yeah,
you all
please.
with these comments.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ariane Montgomery, thank you for hanging around. Come up and tell us give us your name again and then who you represent, who you're with.
Absolutely. Can you hear me? Hi, you guys. My name is Erin Montgomery, Chairman Hickman, and members of the committee. There are 3 things I want to talk to you guys about specifically when it comes to teacher retention. So the lack of poverty funding or dedicated QBE funding for educating kids living in poverty. This funding can be utilized, 1, for giving monetary incentives to teachers teaching in high poverty areas and high needs areas. And so why this is really important is because most of our teachers of color are going to teach in high poverty areas. And since there is a big disparity between students of color, so if we're thinking about African American students make up around 40% of all public education students, and only 26% of teachers are teachers of color, are black teachers, excuse me. And so this is going to be very, very important for really retaining our teachers in the classroom, as there is sometimes issues with access to affordable housing within these particular school districts that absolutely need them. One county that I think of in particular is Gwinnett County Public Schools, that area. There is not housing for anybody at this moment, really. And so when we're thinking about that, even though this is not a urban area or considered an urban area, they have urban area issues, with almost 80% of the student population being majority minority. That is a big difference than when I was in school and graduated from Brookwood in 2009. So we really need to start to think about really the systemic inequities that are facing a lot of these teachers or teacher residents coming into the teaching field in general. Another thing that I want to talk about is really we started to talk about teacher residency programs, and what I have seen to be the most interesting now is really recruiting paraprofessionals into becoming teachers of record. The only thing is, when speaking to them, a lot of them do not even understand that there's options for them to get a MAT. A lot of them are saying that there are issues with principals not telling them, teachers not being telling them these situations. So unique marketing around these teacher residency programs are going to be paramount, and really getting those paraprofessionals to get into these MAT programs. Another thing that I want to talk about, and this will be my last topic, is really the disservice that we're doing to teachers of color through the classroom censorship legislation. So SB 226 and then HB 1084. A lot of these teachers feel psychologically unsafe in their classrooms because they can't even see their identity in the history that is the truth. And so what we need to do is to give teachers autonomy to teach in their classroom, especially since a lot of us are very educated, and really know our demographics and understand how to be culture responsive to the students that we have. So with that being said, please start to think about the systemic issues. This is not a one-size-fits-all. And the question around what does it look like to really retain teachers is going to be based on different demographics. It's going to be based on the different age groups, and also just in general the different counties and what situations are going on in those counties. So this is a very nuanced issue. My name is Erin Montgomery. Again, my organization is Georgia Educators for Equity and Justice Incorporated. We are a 501c3 that will be rebuilding the Black teacher pipeline in the state of Georgia, and I will be happy to consult you guys if necessary on best practices of retention. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you.
Chairman, can we get a report too?
Yes, ma'am. Can you send us? Okay, thank you. Jill, and introduce yourself and tell us who you're with.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Jill Penn. I'm the co-president of the United Campus Workers of Georgia, which is the state's higher ed union for all employees in the USG system. And I thank you all for letting me speak today, for including public testimony. And I thank everybody in this room who's working so hard for education, for advocating for our future, for our students. They work very hard despite all the challenges that they have, and keep up the good work. I do want to give a little bit of perspective from the higher ed, and I also thank you for, you mentioned, Chairman, that you're going to have additional meetings, and so assume you're going to, one of them will focus a bit more on higher education as well. And we do appreciate, this has been mentioned about the cost of living adjustments over the last few years. We do appreciate these recent cost of living adjustments very much. The situation would be much worse without them, for sure. And these cost of living adjustments, annual cost of living adjustments, need to continue. Let me give you an example of why. Okay, so today, an assistant professor who began working in August 1st, 2014, with a starting salary of $56,000 would now make $66,560 with the recent cost of living adjustments added in. However, if you go to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics inflation calculator, the adjusted salary for the $56,000 in 2014 should be over $74,000. So this salary is over $7,500 short of the inflation-adjusted salary for 2024. So in effect, the assistant professor who started at $56,000 in 2014 has taken a $7,500 pay cut after 10 years of service to their university. Let me give you another example. I also work for a USG institution. I'm a biology professor. And one of the things that we all would like to do is a high-impact practice, which is mentoring student research projects. It's an incredibly important project especially for first-generation college students. So many of our students have difficulty getting hired because they say they don't have the experience. Well, one very easy way to give them experience is independent research projects, and all of our faculty would love to do much more of this. We do have the opportunity, and I am not exaggerating when I tell you we get paid less than $35 a week to teach students how to do independent research. That's less than $5 a day. Starbucks drinks cost more than that, right? Why are we not spending the $10 billion surplus that we have in Georgia? We have the money. We have the need. So I ask that the people in this room do everything you can to put more of this money into education, both K through 12 and higher ed. Besides pay, we're incredibly understaffed. In my department, we've lost 25% of our faculty since 2019, and they have not been replaced, so even with increasing enrollment at my college. The result of that is impossible, unsustainable workloads. We need to hire more faculty and staff. That is what will counter the burnout, which is the number one reason people are leaving. We are understaffed. We are overworked. We need more money to hire more people, both teaching staff and the auxiliary staff, like mental health professionals. You may have seen the study from Matthew Bodie, who leads the American Association of University Professors, AAUP. The majority of Georgia faculty would not recommend working in Georgia to their colleagues. More than 25% applied for a job in another state, and they plan to apply for a job in another state this year. 30% said they don't plan to remain in higher ed long term. The top issue in higher ed is salary. Earlier, a very important issue was brought up, teacher training. So that's also at the higher ed level. USG plans to cut teacher ed programs at many of our rural colleges. That's a conversation you need to have with Chancellor Perdue. Why do they want to do that? Especially when there is a need for more teachers in Georgia, in rural areas. We cannot be cutting our teacher education programs. I have probably a lot more I could talk about, but I'll stop there. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
We're going to allow Senator Burns to ask a question, and we'll wrap it up.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your input. Help me understand again your affiliation.
Well, I teach biology in the USG system, and I'm also the co-president of the United Campus Workers of Georgia.
United Campus
Workers.
Workers of Georgia.
Yes.
Georgia's a right-to-work state, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And how many members does your organization represent?
Well, we have 1,000 members. and-
1,000 dues-paying members?
Correct.
Correct. Okay, thank you. I spent 30 years at the University System of Georgia. I was a tenured faculty member, I was a dean, and I was a president. And I don't deny any of the allegations that you suggest. But the reality is, the regents control the University System of Georgia, not the legislature. Now, we provide resources to them. And I would recommend that you have that conversation with the chancellor and the regents.
Can you help facilitate that? Because I've tried.
I would suggest that you get on their agenda and have a conversation. Thank you.
Well, you do control the funding.
Yeah.
Indeed, we do.
Yeah. Thank y'all. It's been a great meeting, and it's been ideal, and I want to thank the people very personally. They know who they are that helped us put this together. So thank you, and thank you. And y'all have a great day. Look forward to the next meeting. Thank you.
We are adjourned.